tribal chief is gone, the legendary reign is over, Roman Reigns is in an unprecedented and potentially very exciting situation. We will take stock together of what we can expect from him in the coming months. What WWE absolutely must do, or not.
He's here! Roman Reigns is here!
Make yourself comfortable, grab a coffee. We're going to talk about all of this.
You are on the Wrestling Paradise.
The new quest of Roman Reigns. Let's go.
Acknowledge me!
So before anything else, it is important to fully understand the context surrounding Roman Reigns at the end of 2024. We remember WrestleMania 40, the end of the legendary reign of Roman Reigns. A reign that lasted 16 days. Can you even imagine what that represents? The most impressive and significant reign of the modern era, without a doubt, followed by an absence of several months, with a bit of uncertainty surrounding Roman Reigns, because we think, well, we're not that naive. One can easily guess that he will eventually return, especially since there was a whole story that was just waiting to be continued, particularly with The Rock, but that's another topic. And we were wondering when he would be able to return, and especially what he would be able to do from now on, being in a position he hadn't been in, I would say since 2020, but in reality, it's a position in which, at least since he became the new Roman Reigns, the one he has essentially been since his return at SummerSlam 2020, a completely unprecedented situation, one he has never been in. What are we going to be able to say about him? Because it's true that we could ask a lot of questions, and it's legitimate. Or WrestleMania 40 then, he lost his title, he is no longer champion. Will he return to reclaim it while remaining the same? What will the situation be upon his return? And indeed, this situation has evolved over the months in 2024, with Solo Sikoa allegedly taking his place. At least, he himself claims to be the head of the bloodline. Well, here's the context. Basically, during his absence, Roman Reigns is no longer the champion. He is no longer the face of WWE, and he is also no longer the head of the bloodline, since Solo Sikoa and a new bloodline have taken shape. He is returning at SummerSlam at the end of the main event match between Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa, precisely the two men in the discourse, I would say. On one hand, his successor, purely from a sporting perspective, in the title. On the other hand, from a more symbolic and familial point of view. However, it is indeed Solo Sikoa who intervenes to prevent him from defeating Cody Rhodes, thus indirectly helping Cody Rhodes. And now, the situation is that we have the OTC, his new gimmick in a way, the original tribal chief, against the new tribal chief. And in light of all this, also seeing the surge in popularity regarding Roman Reigns, then let's not forget that despite the fact that he was heel, even during his reign, he still had a lot of fans. Moreover, it's not for nothing that WWE was able to break numerous records of all kinds during Roman Reigns' reign. But what is certain is that it feels even more unanimous, since basically he has been absent, that he has been missed by the fans, also thanks to the work on Solo Sikoa, who has made sure, in wanting to take his place, etc., we regret Roman Reigns even more. And at that moment, this is what we will really talk about. What scenarios are possible for Roman Reigns? And above all, what needs to be told with Roman Reigns? Because it's certain that we could do some fantasy booking. But right now, the most important thing is what expectations we can have regarding his character, what the follow-ups are, etc., etc. I have been very critical of Reigns in recent months because I was jaded, so I want to clarify that this was a comment written at the end of September 2024. I've been very critical of Reigns in recent months because I was tired of his 4-year reign. It was really too much. But now, I find him more interesting in this position of someone who has lost everything. He becomes the underdog again. His character needed a refresh. I also hope that his move pool will be a bit more expanded. These are small details that can indicate that something has changed in him. I don't want to see him all the time in this role. I'm at the end of the table. Everything belongs to me. I want to see a Roman Reigns who changes, who finds humility, and to see him manage on his own once the ongoing storyline is finished. In any case, I hope it won't be to recreate the original bloodline. An occasional association with the Usos, Sami Zayn, or Rollins. It could be nice, but there you go. He needs to make his own way, like a Roman in full redemption carrying his cross. And for WrestleMania 42, let's reform the Shield. Come on, Triple H, break the piggy bank and bring us Moxley, Ambrose for early 2026, then I just want to say, oh my gosh, that really makes me want to. Well, there are many very interesting elements that encompass several specific points that WWE must be wary of, but also take into account, especially. So, point by point, first of all, he is critical of the last few months, and especially that he has been jaded by his 4 years of reign. I completely understand him. I've been jaded about certain things in the booking for a while now, without being a fan of Roman Reigns. Anyway, I always say that in wrestling, one must make a distinction between the performer, the wrestler who executes what is asked of him, and the booking. And clearly, the problem lies with the booking. Even if what I personally criticized about Roman Reigns, the performer, the wrestler, beyond the booking, is, for example, the fact that there are constant interventions, that he is always in a booking where he comes out weakened in reality, since he almost never wins anymore. Especially since Triple H has been in creative power. We tend to forget this a bit, but I would like to remind everyone, even though I know many are aware of it, and that's not a problem, but it is still information. One thing we all need to be aware of is that, remember, between 2020 and the arrival of Triple H in creative, which was in the summer of 2022, during those 2 years, Roman Reigns won a lot in a clean manner, even in a more dominant way with the guillotine. But since that time, it has happened much more often that he wins in a controversial manner. Whether his opponent had been protected or there had been controversy, there are plenty of examples. Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle, the intervention of Solo Sikoa, Crown Jewel at the end of 2023, or your Jimmy Uso. There was, after all, a controversy with the foot. In short, there was always something that helped Roman Reigns win in a very welcome way. Sure, he finished with a spear, but there were far too many disputes, cheating, and interventions for him to come out really strong. I was the first to be jaded about it. I think it was poor booking, because sometimes choices have to be made. Sometimes you get tired of always wanting to keep everyone strong. Sometimes you make choices, even if it means later giving a rematch to the one who lost decisively. But you shouldn't always have non-clean finishes. It's pointless. And by the way, I could even say the same thing about WrestleMania 40. In fact, the number of interventions and things, which ultimately make Cody Rhodes' victory not so dominant over Roman, despite the fact that he is still the chosen one, Cody Rhodes. He did, after all, end Roman Reigns' reign. There were so many interventions and so many finishes. In the end, what does it all mean? Anyway, what's certain is that the booking had a lot of issues. However, what I criticize about the performer himself, Roman Reigns, is that over time, though we can understand it, as there are other factors at play, such as personal life, time passes, we age, and the context evolves. It's certain that the Roman Reigns of summer 2020 and his first year, in terms of intensity, drive, and rage, compared to what he has become later, is a guy who is much more arrogant and much less intense, including in the way he speaks and behaves. Often, I was fed up that in promos, Roman would start laughing or take a somewhat mocking tone, whereas at the very beginning of his reign, he didn't do that. At the very beginning of his reign, it was shouting with intensity, and I much preferred this Roman Reigns who had grit. At the same time, that's why I was talking about context, as it was understandable. He had everything to prove. He was starting a reign, returning from a long absence, and had completely reinvented himself. It's normal that he was eager and ready to make an impact. And then, over time, with a reign that settles in, with such repetitive elements, nothing very refreshing, the booking plays a part as well. We have seen a more laid-back Roman Reigns, even if, well, laid back, no. Physically, and also in terms of attitude, I find, even though it was still very good because it's Roman Reigns, it was less impressive than in his prime. However, there were of course moments here and there that contradicted what I just said, and fortunately still pleased us and showed that, after all, Roman Reigns is a big name and a great wrestler. Obviously, I think about all those very memorable moments surrounding Sami Zayn in 2023, full of pure cinematic moments. Obviously, everything that was purely the Bloodline Civil War, all of that. In short, Roman Reigns, there have fortunately been some very good moments, even when things were generally not going well for his character, and in, let's say, him as a wrestler. In this position where he has lost everything, it is very interesting. It's even more interesting. Anyway, I would say that there are plenty of wrestlers like this who are much more interesting to follow and where there is much more to tell. Let's say, when they are the hunters rather than being the hunted. So on one hand, yes, having this historic and legendary reign, breaking record after record, and being in this position where he wants to be the greatest of all time, summarized, and finally, we do everything to make him the greatest of all time. It was good, there were very good things, it was powerful, it was charismatic, etc. But it's true that this is a position, so I don't know if we can say it's really more interesting than that of the champion who is being hunted. But what is certain is that for Roman Reigns, it's a completely new dynamic. When you say, who becomes the underdog again? I agree that, just like we saw in the brilliant scene, it was truly an extraordinary scene in the stadium with Cody Rhodes, where Roman Reigns said that he had nothing left to lose because he had already lost everything. He no longer had his title, he no longer had the necklace, he no longer had his Wiseman, he no longer had Jimmy Uso. He is a character who has lost everything. And it's true that this is completely unprecedented. It's strange and it's interesting and new to see Roman Reigns not at the top at all. On the contrary, this is a Roman Reigns who must reclaim everything, who is in the process of regaining, who is seeking revenge after having lost everything. It's an exciting situation. Exciting. I wonder if we've ever had, in the history of WWE, situations like this where we had a wrestler who had, because indeed you can say that a wrestler who lost his title after a reign was then in a position to reclaim it, that's for sure. But have others ever been at the same point as Roman Reigns? I don't think so. Honestly, I would say no. And it's normal. It's perfectly normal, because no one has had a reign as long as his, as impactful as his. And above all, he hasn't just lost his title, he has also lost his grip and, let's say, his role in the family. So there is also a much more personal dimension to consider. And he has really lost everything. So I find that this is a mega interesting dynamic that will be exciting to follow. So I imagine, possibly, all the way to WrestleMania 42, for example. After that, one could also imagine that all this redemption, as you say, even though personally I would call it more the new quest of Roman Reigns or the revenge of Roman Reigns, could perhaps extend to WrestleMania 41 and culminate in the ultimate victory against the final boss, The Rock, who might either be the head of the bloodline at that time or the champion. We can think what we want about it, but it's a possibility in any case. So the question is, yes, how long could this dynamic of reclaiming and being the underdog who has to regain everything he has lost last? That is a real question. In any case, I completely agree that he needed a refresh. It's true that it was going in circles too much, it was too repetitive, and it was very predictable, including the matches. The promos, not all of them, but sometimes the promos too, often went like this. He makes his entrance, blah blah, acknowledge me, and sometimes there was nothing else. Sometimes the opponent for the next PLE would arrive right away, and it was sometimes pitifully poor. But anyway, I agree, let's be happy. His character is in a new dynamic. It would be good that in this new dynamic, and being in an OTC character who has to reclaim everything, which is completely new, a new situation. Why not also take the opportunity to expand or vary his moves? It's true, that would be relevant. If Roman Reigns were indeed doing that, I would say there is a real effort put into basically the nuances brought into this new version of himself. Moreover, one thing I would like to highlight is that in a September SmackDown, there were two moments where you could see that Roman Reigns was bringing nuances, let's say, and small references to the past that go a bit in the direction of him now being a former tribal chief who has a new version, but who also, he still needs to get used to not being in his former position. I am of course thinking of two moments. There was a moment just before he entered the ring when he stood as he did throughout his reign in the corner, and he would turn his head, and generally at that moment he would look at the championship belt that Paul Heyman, the wise man, held. And he did that, except there was no longer Paul Heyman nor the belt. A detail that perhaps not everyone noticed, but which was really well thought out. Basically, I watch like I usually do, but my title is gone. My wise man is no longer here. Things have changed, time has passed, and the situation is different. It is very subtly and cleverly symbolized. Just like you had a moment in the ring as well. Actually, several. I can even mention 2 others. Where you first had Roman Reigns reaching out, as he did with Paul Heyman, for Nick Aldis, the general manager of SmackDown, to give him the microphone. He first gave him the contract, then the microphone. But well, it was still a nod to the past. And above all, I think about the fact that Roman Reigns had made, which were also his first words since his turn, a promo where he said, "This is my WWE." And we remember that he made that statement at the very beginning of his reign as well. So, great already in what we saw. Let's say in early September 2024, it's already great to see so many references and nods to the fact that he was something before, but he is no longer. And there is already this little nuance I find. And what could we hope for in terms of a new move or variation in his move pool? So, personally, I don't know if it's certain that it wouldn't really be a novelty. I don't know if it would be so. If it's said to be great, that's for sure. But I find that the guillotine hasn't been present at all for quite a while, or when it was much less powerful than before, while I remind you that it was his finisher for a long time. It's still the move that had put Cesaro in a groggy state, so it seems very old, but it was also during Roman Reigns' reign, when he also took down Daniel Bryan and others. So I find it unfortunate to have basically given way to the spear, which is, well, certainly who is more destructive, both destructive and powerful, and Roman Reigns did that move so well that it's still cool. But I personally miss the guillotine anyway. After that, he might. So the question is, will the original tribal chief want to come back? Maybe in his original wrestling style. For example, one might say, that's why I'm thinking about the guillotine. It's because it was the new move at the very beginning of his reign. And one might say that if he is truly the original tribal chief and wants to reclaim his position, he might as well use his main weapon at the time when he was most dominant, the guillotine. I would like that. But still, in any case, there are nuances to add, that's for sure. Then, you also say, yes, all these little details, in any case, I also want to see them. And I agree that if we were to see Roman Reigns again in a role, like you say, where, yes, I am the head of the table, the true leader of the bloodline, it's me, everything belongs to me, that would be really dull and creatively poor. But with the scene that took place between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns in the stadium in Atlanta before Bad Blood, I have the impression that he himself also has a message where he says that he has everything. To reclaim, he has lost everything. I believe, at least from what we've seen so far in early September 2024, that it's definitely shaping up to show a Roman who is, as you say, in humility, in the process of reclaiming, seeking revenge, who is clear-headed, and who is not claiming to be the greatest or the best because he has clearly seen that the facts prove otherwise. And I also hope with all my heart, and you make a good point in highlighting this, that we will see him manage on his own, not only, well, in this case, being allied with Cody Rhodes and being in this multi-person war, let's say, against the bloodline of Solo Sikoa. For the moment, he is not alone. But I also hope, I agree with you, that once he has finished all of this, we won't fall back into the traps and the less enjoyable aspects of his reign, namely having an entire bloodline with him. So even though, on one hand, it will be difficult to avoid, basically that he doesn't manage on his own, because being the new head of the bloodline, or at least becoming the head of the bloodline again, he will definitely have a tribe with him. He will be a chief again with a tribe. So, after that, the question is whether all these people need to accompany him every time. Should they intervene in all these matches or not? That's the nuance. I hope we will even see a Roman Reigns who demands to be on his own because he needs to prove himself. And that he doesn't need to be helped. And even as a spectator, we don't want to see 10,000 interventions every time in Roman Reigns matches. So this is an opportunity to reinvent ourselves in this. And hopefully it will indeed be, as you said, to not recreate the original bloodline. On one hand, I would still find it beautiful to see him again, especially with Jay. Me, actually Jimmy, much less. However, seeing him again with Jay, knowing that it's with Jay that everything started. In the early months of his reign, with Jay and Paul Heyman of course, we can say that they are the two since day one, in the case of Roman Reigns at least, who have been there from the very beginning. So, to see that trio again, I would be happy, personally, as a fan of Roman Reigns, because that was where it all started. On the other hand, seeing him again with Jay and Jimmy, what would happen to Solo Sikoa if Roman Reigns were to become the head of the tribe again? Would Solo fall back in line and become a lackey again? It would be really absurd to see him completely demoted, back to square one. Then, you mentioned Sami Zayn. Yeah, I won't hide that. Ultimately, if it's, well, especially Sami Zayn, all the interest for him was really, yes, I want to be part of the bloodline. I'm not a real crazy person, but, well, my capital of sympathy, I manage to insert myself into it. So, what can I do differently today? Especially since Sami Zayn is no longer in the light and comedic side he used to be, where he was very good at the time. After Seth Rollins, I have a question for you. Tell me what you think in the comments. Don't you think that, while yes, for Roman Reigns to reclaim his position in this new dynamic, he must beat Solo Sikoa, that's obvious, he also needs to defeat Cody Rhodes to truly have complete revenge. But don't you also think that in this quest for revenge, a step before could be a match against Seth Rollins? Because if you look closely at WrestleMania 40, it is Seth Rollins who distracts Roman Reigns, which ultimately costs him the defeat. With this past from the Shield and the fact that Seth Rollins had betrayed him back when they were together in the Shield, this history, this Achilles heel for Roman Reigns cost him the defeat. Symbolically, shouldn't he first overcome that past, which still seems to disturb him, before he can truly become the head of the bloodline and the champion again? There would be a story to tell. So, it's certain that we've seen Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins before, but not in the current dynamic. We've seen it before. For example, I remember that in 2016, they faced each other one-on-one. Even in the Royal Rumble 2022, he faced off during the legendary reign of Roman Reigns. But remember, it was a match that ended in a DQ, a disqualification of Roman Reigns. Moreover, it's very interesting to recall that at the Royal Rumble 2022, he did not defeat Seth Rollins cleanly. And that 2 years, almost and a half later, it is once again while being tortured by Seth Rollins that Roman Reigns loses a bit of his composure. Or at least, he doesn't lose his composure, but he loses control of the situation, ultimately leading to his loss. Very interesting. This is long-term storytelling that I commend very highly, especially when you think back to 2014. 10 years after Seth Rollins' heel turn, it's Seth Rollins who disrupts Roman Reigns at the worst possible moment in the main event of WrestleMania. So, honestly, I think all the elements are there to tell a deep and truly psychological story of a Seth Rollins who would continue to torment Roman Reigns by saying, "Look, not only did I con you when we were in the Shield, basically I betrayed you, but also because of me you lost at WrestleMania 40 at..." He could definitely go with a storyline like that, and it would be super interesting, really. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks to everyone who comments, likes, keeps the channel alive, and participates. A big thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's great to share this. It's a sharing experience. We imagine things as wrestling fans we share, and we are here for that. So thank you all, and see you very soon for more videos. And let's hope that WWE does what is best for Roman Reigns, which is, it should be really well booked, especially, and that the story of Roman Reigns' grand return, his great reclamation, and his great revenge ends well, and above all, is well told. This is because there is potentially one of the most beautiful stories in WWE in recent years to tell, provided of course that certain pitfalls are avoided and that we take into account our expectations as fans.
We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?